Hi, my name's Haley Lafferty, and I am a behavior interventionist for the Ozark School District. And I chose the topic of RTI, response to intervention, for my final project. And the reason I chose this topic is because a lot of our teachers, classroom, gen education teachers, our literacy coaches, even our admin, a lot of times we are focusing on the academic side of RTI. In my job, I have a unique new position in my district, and we focus on the behavior side of RTI and how that model looks identical to the academic, the same exact tier outline, but we are focusing on behaviors and self regulation. So, the reason that RTI was even needed, the reason that it came about was after the 2004 reauthorization of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And I'm reading this from an article written by Catherine Stahl. And after this reauthorization happened, it was said that the configurations to qualify a student for a specific learning disability changed. Instead of using a discrepancy model, they had to use assessment data that tracks a child's response to scientific research based interventions. And that needed those research based interventions, we needed to come up with a specific process for how to use those. So, RTI, the definition for that I'm reading from the Uniting Academic and Behavior Interventions book written by Austin Buffum. And that definition for RTI is a systematic process of tiered support to ensure every student receives the additional time and support needed to learn at high levels. So in the book, it talks about what that RTI process looks like. So tier one, the bottom tier, whenever we look at the response to intervention triangle, the big base it is goes for 80 to 90% of our students. So these are universal supports, universal instruction, but we're still using evidence-based instruction. These are where we teach our priority standards. We have our first aid, is what we call it with our PLC team, for the 15% non-mastered. So those 10 to 20, 15-ish percent of kids, we talk about in our PLC meetings, what do we do for those kids? What is their next step? And we document using the team tracking on our PLC agenda. This is for all students in Tier 1, and it's preventative strategies, antecedent strategies to teach these standards. Whenever you look at the behavior side of it, we are looking at preventative strategies, antecedent strategies to keep kids self-regulated and to keep those behaviors, academic and social behaviors, appropriate. Then for those 10 to 20% of kids that Tier 1 did not cut it for them, we look at what happens next for them. So in our district, we call it they need a general practitioner. For our academic side, this is our instructional coaches. And for our behavior side and 504 students, this is our counselor. And they are getting high efficacy, rapid response interventions. These can be in small groups, and these are at-risk students. So they are still getting Tier 1 instruction. They are also getting Tier 2 support as well. And then for those 1 to 5% of kids that still need additional supports, these are kids that we're looking at need to go to urgent care or the EI. So the ER, excuse me. So the general practitioner, our literacy coach, or a counselor takes their Tier 2 form that they filled out to the RTI team, and they just explain and show the data that it's not cutting it for this student. We need some direct, intensive interventions. So in Tier 3, we are looking at intensive individual interventions one-on-one with a student. On the academic side, we are looking at assessment-based interventions, high intensity, and then on the behavioral side, we are needing intensive, durable procedures, things that are going to keep the students safe. And then after we excuse me, look at this process in Tier 3, if we're still having needs not met from that student, that is when we look at a Tier 4, an IEP referral. We are using RTI to keep students out of special education to hopefully service them and meet their needs through the RTI process. But how do you create your process? How do you decipher what that process looks for you? And in the same book, Uniting Academic and Behavior Instructions, interventions, they talk about there are 4 steps, just like there are 4 steps in PLC. You need to have a collective responsibility, so a shared belief that the primary responsibility of each member on your RTI team is to ensure high levels of learning for our student, meaning we believe that they can learn at high levels. The second part is concentrated instruction. So a systematic process of identifying knowledge and skills and behaviors that the student needs to learn in order to master that. Third piece is convergent assessments, and this is an ongoing process of collectively analyzing targeted evidence, collecting data, and making sure that we are targeting a skill for that student. And then we guide the question as where are we at now? At our next data tracking point, now where are we at? And then the fourth piece of that process is that we have certain access. So this guarantees every student will receive the time and support needed to learn at high levels. So this goes back to that thinking that students can learn at high levels with the right support. An issue with this system, with the RTI process, is that once they move out of tier 1, a student does, then who takes care of them in tier 2? It is not that once they have moved out of tier 1 that the classroom teacher steps aside. Now that tier 2, our general practitioner, our literacy coaches, or our counselors, they're going to step in with those classroom teachers to instruct with them, give them tools that they can use in the classroom. We don't just pass off one to another. That's where we stay with those collaborative teams, those learning communities, and we are targeting together for that student. In response to intervention, a huge part of it is that we are responding, not reacting. So we are providing tiered intervention for children who need the most help. So response to intervention is just tracking student data. We are using evidence-based practices, evidence-based interventions for each student to make data-based decisions to ensure that all students can learn at a high level of learning. Thank you.